Here at home, as we've been reporting, Donald Trump is going to be in Iowa today for a rally and for a picnic. This is his second straight weekend of campaigning in the Hawkeye state in which just 32% of voters have a favorable view of Trump, 57% meanwhile seeing him unfavorably, this according to a new Quinnipiac poll. That is the worst favorability rating of any of the Republican candidates in that state. Now, today's visit by Trump also comes just a few days after the Des Moines Register's editorial board called on him to drop out of the race, describing his campaign as, quote, a bloviating sideshow. As a result of that editorial, the Trump campaign has denied the paper press credentials and is trying to keep it from covering today's event. NBC's Katie Tur is live in Oskaloosa, Iowa. That is where Trump is going to appear later today. So, Katie, I guess drama we've come to expect with Donald Trump in any appearance he has. He's trying to shut out the largest newspaper in Iowa. Is he going to be able to do that? And what are we expecting at this event today?
Well, he can, but I think that if you're a writer for the Des Moines Register, you can pretty much just walk in. Security at these things has never been very tight. If you don't have a press credential, you can just walk in, pretend that you're a member of the crowd, and cover it. I think there are two really interesting things that are happening here. By banning them, he's sort of sending a message to the rest of the press saying that if you don't say what we want you to say or say what we'd like you to say, then we're not going to let you cover our events. We've certainly been threatened with that over the course of this campaign so far. But secondly, the more interesting thing and the bigger picture of this is if you notice every single event that he's been at, something big or something not groundbreaking, news-making, controversial has come out of each one of his events. He had the McCain gaffe. He had reading Lindsey Graham's cell phone at the next one. Then he's covering the border down in Texas. He's talking about running for a third party down there. And up here, where he might not have been making more news because it's a Saturday, he's decided to ban the Des Moines Register. It's a reason to get people talking about his campaign on what would otherwise be just a regular, normal campaign stop that wouldn't necessarily make news.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. I mean, this is a guy who has a nose for how to get publicity and how to get attention. Katie Tur, live in Oskaloosa, Iowa. Interesting to see what happens at that event today. I know you'll be keeping an eye on it. Thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it. And Donald Trump leads the Republican field in several recent national polls, including an 11-point advantage in a new Washington Post ABC News poll, nearly doubling up the second-place candidate there, Scott Walker. It would be an understatement to say that Trump has ruffled a few feathers within the Republican Party. But the businessman could give the GOP an even bigger headache if he doesn't win the Republican nomination, telling the Hill newspaper this week that in that case he would consider running as a third-party candidate if he doesn't feel he's been treated fairly by the Republican National Committee. And the thought of that, the thought of a big third-party candidacy might take you back to the year 1992. It certainly does for me, when Ross Perot, another business mogul with no political experience, ran for president. And Perot garnered 19% of the vote in that race. It was enough. If you ask many Republicans, this is what they will tell you. They will say, in many cases, that it cost George H.W. Bush his re-election bid and sent Bill Clinton to the White House. I think that's a myth for a couple reasons. One, exit polls found that just 38% of Perot supporters said that Bush was their second choice in that race. The same number said that Clinton was their second choice, which means that Perot's campaign seems to have hurt Bush and Clinton equally. Now consider what would happen, though, if Trump were to run as a third-party candidate in 2016. According to the most recent Washington Post ABC News poll, Hillary Clinton would beat Jeb Bush, considered the GOP establishment frontrunner, by 6 points if they're matched together in a two-way race. Then, if you add Trump to the mix, you make it a three-way race. Look at that. Clinton's lead explodes to 16 points. A 6-point lead in a two-way race, a 16-point lead in a three-way race. That is clear evidence that Donald Trump would have a very negative effect on the Republicans as an independent candidate. So let's talk more about that possibility that Trump is dangling out there of a third-party bid with E.J. Dion, an MSNBC contributor and a columnist with the Washington Post. And he is joining this morning's panel, MSNBC contributor Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, Amy Holmes with The Blaze, and Evan McMorris-Santoro of BuzzFeed. So, E.J., I know I wrote a little bit this week about the myth of Ross Perot in 1992. This story gets repeated all the time. It's just casually thrown out there. Oh, yeah, he cost George Bush Sr. the election. A lot of the stories I went back and read for the thing I wrote this week are your stories covering that campaign in 1992. So I wonder, when you look back at the Perot phenomenon and you look at what Donald Trump is threatening to do right now, what are the similarities and differences that you see?
Well, I think the biggest difference is the one you just showed on the screen, which is that Trump, particularly now, he's running in the Republican primary. Perot didn't run in any party's primary. And so Trump is clearly winning mainly conservative support. And so Hillary Clinton's lead goes from 6 to 16 when you put Trump in the race. Perot, on the other hand, was somebody with a real mix of views. There were some of his views, particularly on social issues, were quite liberal. Some of his other views were fairly conservative. He was against free trade, against NAFTA, which kind of cuts a little into both parties. That's why it wasn't surprising that he took equally from both candidates. We actually went back at the time and tried to look state by state, and the only state Trump might have flipped to Clinton from Bush was Ohio. And even if you count that, Clinton still wins. So you're right in that piece you wrote. It is a myth. But there are a couple of things they have in common. One, it's obviously a business guy. I can get things done. And the other is to speak for a broad and quite general anger that's in the electorate about Washington, about Congress, about things not getting done. The last difference is Perot was very specific on a lot of issues. Trump just seems to like to call people losers and morons.
It is. Well, let me ask the panel. I mean, this is the dread scenario right now, though, Amy, for Republicans. I mean, I don't think, as we say, the Perot thing cost Bush, but you look at those numbers, that's clear evidence. Trump doing what he's doing right now hurts the Republicans if he runs third party.
Well, if he runs third party, and that's a big if. Does Donald Trump want to reach into his own pocket to fund a multi-million-dollar presidential campaign? And that still has to be decided. But we're looking at these national polls. We should also look at the state polls. So looking at Iowa, for example, Trump is having a good time creating this controversy with the Des Moines Register. But in fact, he's far behind Scott Walker in Iowa. It's not expected at this point, it's very early stages, that he would win Iowa. Again, Jeb Bush, for example, is up in Florida. John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, he's up in Ohio. So when you look at it on a state-by-state basis, this national polling is a bit misleading. And on this network yesterday on MSNBC, I had a chance to talk with Mr. Trump, and I asked him why he said in the past that he identified more as a Democrat and he believed that the economy did better under Democrats. Well, he gave an answer that right now has conservative bloggers up in arms, pulling out their hair, saying that Donald Trump is not a conservative and he actually does not represent Republican values.
And this is part of that story that's been out there for a while now. You know, Trump has said many things in the past that would paint him as not in line with today's conservatives. So it's a question of if and when that catches up with him. But the other question there, and Trump is basically saying to Republicans here, look, there's the threat of the third party candidacy, and he's saying you got to treat me with respect. So Republicans have this, if you want to take him at his word on that, Republicans have a fine line to walk here. Can they use the kind of ammunition against Trump that Amy was just talking about without angering Trump so much that he bolts?
Well, it seems to be so far what they've done is tried to sort of ride that line, right? When Trump said what he said about McCain, which I don't think was a gaffe, actually. It's something he said a bunch of times. 15 years ago, he said that he didn't think that McCain was a war hero because of being captured. You know, the GOP jumped all over him. The RNC actually said, you know, this is you can't say this kind of thing. It's terrible. We don't like it. But when it comes to the debates, they're saying, look, if you qualify for the debates and you're running for president as a Republican, you get to go. So, I mean, so far they seem to be trying to sort of keep that balance going, which is that, you know, when it comes to some of the more outlandish things he says, they'll go after him. But when it comes to sort of letting him run a campaign, they're going to let him do that.
You know what I found interesting, aside from just the hat itself, the message on the hat. What was it? Make America great again. And the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that was Morning in America. Was Ronald Reagan, 1984, let's make America prouder, stronger, better. So I also find it interesting, you know, he is this guy who likes to use the anger, but we're also seeing him try to infuse some optimism and saying, I'm your savior. All right, things are all mucked up. under this Democratic president, look to me, I'm the tough guy, I can get things done, I'm the business guy, but I'm also going to bring you back to that morning in America. And there's that subliminal Ronald Reagan messaging. You know, in the Republican Party, he's the saint.
I think
he's the patron saint.
So the message, the Trump message, and who it's resonating with. So Victoria talks about there's a little nostalgia there for the Reagan era. And maybe people sort of Trump's age who were young, a little younger during the Reagan years, and they look back as those were the best years. We want to go back to those. But there's also this combination of there's all the immigration stuff. There's lots of nativism in his message. You listen to him on the economic issues. He's more of he sounds a little bit more like a populist on economic issues. He talks about national health care. He talks about taking care of the less fortunate. Somebody said to me the best description of him I heard was Pat Buchanan with a much bigger wallet.
There is some of that. First of all, that point on Reagan is a great point because make